Hello, it's Scott Manley here. A long time ago, in 1994 to be precise, Star Wars. Yes, this is the best Star Wars game ever. And you can hear that it is Imperial themed. At the Battle of Yavin, rebel terrorists aided by spies and traitors within the Empire struck a cowardly blow at the new symbol of Imperial power, the Death Star. Darth Vader brought swift justice to the rebels by destroying their main base on Hoth. The pitiful remnants of the Alliance have now scattered to the Outer Rim. In the days ahead, the Emperor will call upon the Imperial Navy to eradicate the last vestiges of rebellion and restore law and order to the galaxy. So yeah, this was the sequel to X-Wing, which of course was amazing for its time, and this kind of took the game, it refined the engine, and it put you on the bad guy's side, and it became easily the best Star Wars game ever released. Obviously it's looking pretty dated, but the good parts of it still stand up really well today. Now this is the CD-ROM version, but the original game had cutscenes, they just weren't quite as smooth. The total install was like 15 megabytes, I believe.
The Empire is on the verge of success. Soon, peace and order will be restored throughout the galaxy. Even now, our capable forces, led by Darth Vader, are striking back at the rebel insurgents.
Look at all those spaceships, more than could be possibly rendered by the game engine.
The rebels are unprepared for our attack. Signal Vice Admiral Thrawn to launch his TIE squadrons immediately.
That's right, this came out 18 months after the Heir to the Empire books, so Admiral Thrawn became part of the universe.
This rebel stronghold has no hope of escape. Commence the attack.
Yes, sir.
I'm thinking that's the first time that Thrawn actually got given a voice. Obviously, played by a completely different actor, completely different style these days. He's become part of the Star Wars canon because he's now in the Rebels TV series. But back then, this was definitely extended universe. And let's face it, none of the characters in this game have their voices performed by the actual actors from the movies. Of course, it was 1994, and it wasn't as if Ian McDiarmid was leading Hollywood productions. Now, I should point out, those are TIE Interceptors, but the game is called TIE Fighter, because it basically lets you fly all of the Imperial fighters. This version was repackaged for digital distribution a few years ago by GOG.com. It is based on the 1995 CD-ROM edition, not the 1998 trilogy, which had the proper music. So yeah, the game structure is pretty much the same as X-Wing. You have the different places you can go to. You can learn to fly the fighters and sit inside Darth Vader's meditation thing. And of course the training sequence is pretty much flying your TIE fighter down tunnels. A skill which is of course not very useful for TIE fighters, except right at the very end of Return of the Jedi, where it would have been really useful if they had some experts in this. The sequence is actually a lot more fun if you enable time acceleration. You see in the bottom right it says T time or 2x. You know, there's nothing stopping you enabling that during the combat sequences either, but during these flying down tunnel sequences, yeah, it's a lot better. The only problem is I think that the turn rate appears to be limited, so 4 times doesn't work. You can also do it in the TIE Interceptor and redirect all your power to the engines just to get some real speed going on here. And yeah, the game does actually support joysticks as well, although mapping can be a bit of a hard problem. Once you think you're ready to fly, you can pick a battle. Now, Battle 1 starts just after the Battle of Hoth. There's 4 missions, or 4 series of missions here. 3 of them came with the original game, the 4th was an expansion.
One TIE fighter from Alpha, Beta and Gamma squadrons will be out on patrol around Outpost D-34.
And of course you get fully voiced briefing sequences.
Your mission is to inspect all cargo-carrying vessels as they pass by our station. We are on the lookout for rebel forces that are fleeing from their base on Hoth.
Easy enough, let's get going.
Incoming ships. They are entering the area near Void B-18.
First mission puts you in a stock TIE fighter.
TIE Fighter Alpha 1. Inspect all craft. Freight is requesting permission to pass through this sector. Transport's requesting permission to pass through this sector.
You'll notice I'm redirecting all my power from my weapons into my engines so I could get to the inspection point faster. While I'm here, I can then put the power back in to the weapon so my lasers start recharging, and I'm just flying next to these freighters just to scan them, make sure that they're not carrying anything illegal, such as spice smugglers, right? Or, weapons they might be worried about, or say, rebels that are running away from the base.
Illegal cargo located on one of the freighters.
While I'm unable to capture the freighter, I can actually soften it up for the capture forces.
Alpha 1, help the transport weaken the freighter's shields. The incoming shuttles have not identified themselves.
A big part of the X-Wing and TIE Fighter games is coordinating with other ships in your fleet to help them do their mission.
TIE fighters, beware of enemy shuttles.
And yes, this does mean that there are going to be a lot of those dreaded escort missions, and you will fail missions frequently because something important dies.
Target disabled.
But unlike other games with escort missions, it never really feels unfair. It always feels like you're just in the wrong place and you could have done it better.
Alpha 1, there are some new craft to inspect.
You'll also notice a lot of cross-faction deployments. Those so-called Imperial shuttles are being flown by rebel forces.
Capture operation complete. Secondary mission objectives complete. The Emperor will be fleeing. Good work. The second wave of freighters was inspected. More important, we have captured target destroyed.
By the way, did I mention just how incredibly fragile the TIE fighters are? In X-Wing, you were shooting them out of the sky all the time, and I don't think they adjusted the hit points or anything to make it easier for you. And I think that actually works to the game's advantage. In X-Wing, you started out with 3 different ships. There was the heavy and slow Y-Wing, the slightly better X-Wing, and the very fast Y-Wing. And they were cool and all that, but with TIE Fighter, there's a lot more difference between the performance of these things. And half the ships in the game, they have no shields and you will die to a few shots. You have to be very careful to stay with your friends. Not because they're necessarily going to kill the targets any faster, but, they will take some of the fire for you.
This is Beta 1. Target destroyed.
Another thing about the TIE fighters is that in X-Wing, most of the ships had hyperspace capability. They also had the ability to lock down, deploy their S-foils. In this, the TIE fighters don't have hyperdrive most of the time, and you have to return to a base. In some cases, you can return to the base in the middle of a battle while you still have objectives to complete. But afterwards, you get to hang out with your commanding officer, and he'll explain just how well you did.
You have discovered a freighter full of rebels trying to escape from their base on Hoth. Excellent work. As we expected, fleeing rebels are trying to sneak through this sector.
After a couple of missions, you start deploying from Star Destroyers. You also get to start flying the heavier TIE Bomber. You have a bunch of different munitions to pick from, but generally they allocate the best option for the mission. You get a nice little animation when you're launching from the Star Destroyer, showing the deployment mechanism working. Again, you have to remember that this game was designed to fit into 15 megabytes of hard disk space. It was a different era back then.
Targets dead ahead.
So the TIE Bomber, obviously a lot slower, but it is able to carry a lot of munitions. And it still doesn't have a shield.
Switch to torpedoes and fire at will.
In this mission, we're basically wiping out somebody's supply depot.
The attack on the Bugari pirates has begun.
Thematically, TIE Fighter, instead of rebelling against the Empire, you're obviously, you're now the good guys, and you just kind of justify that the Empire is really trying to bring order and peace. They're going to be the police force of the galaxy. They want to get rid of these evil rebels that are messing around and making it hard for an honest person to make a living. And I must admit, it's quite fun to shoot down rebels.
Alpha 1, target destroyed.
However, eventually the game kind of relents and pits you against a series of Imperial forces who are defecting. I do find it interesting that the new Battlefront game is going to put you in the role of an Imperial in the campaign, and it's really quite amazing to see how many games journalists think this has never been done in the Star Wars universe. I mean, obviously there's the Force Unleashed, but that's a bit more of like a grade, light versus dark thing, since you're a Jedi. But this, you're pretty much a, rank and file Imperial pilot. You didn't sign up to, reshape the galaxy. You kind of signed up to keep order in the galaxy.
Target destroyed. Primary objectives completed.
The pilot is actually officially Marek Steele.
Good work. We have destroyed all the cargo-carrying craft.
Like shooting fish in a barrel.
Well done. The Mugari forces have been completely destroyed.
Go me.
Outpost D-34 has been captured. The rebels and the Mugari are looting it for arms and equipment. The frigate Fogger will launch a transport to recapture the station.
Now, as the game progresses, some of the missions you get a second commanding officer to talk to, and he speaks directly for the Emperor.
The Emperor is concerned by the rebels' capture of Outpost D-34. The most disturbing element is that they seem to know exactly how to time their attacks when Imperial forces are engaged in another sector. Be alert for clues and opportunities to inspect or capture any rebel craft leaving the outpost when we recapture it.
We're worried there might be a mole. But yeah, this mission is the first one where you get to use a TIE interceptor. It's obviously a lot faster, it has better firepower, but I think it's even more fragile than the regular TIE fighter. You quickly learn not to take on most of the enemy ships head on.
TIE interceptors beta. Destroy enemy shuttles and transports. Target destroyed. Alpha 1. Target destroyed. Alpha 1. Mission critical craft under attack. The frigate Fogger is taking damage. All TIE interceptors. Good hunting. TIE interceptors Iota to Alpha 1. We will help you.
So here's me sneaking in close to check out this container ship as part of my orders from the Emperor.
Secondary objectives completed. The Emperor will be pleased. You have located the rebels' cache of our stolen equipment. Transport Omega will disable and capture this transport. This is Beta 1. Target destroyed. Be careful, Alpha 1.
So I should also talk about the graphics. These are in what is called Super VGA. That's 640 by 480. The game was actually originally released in 320 by 200, if you can imagine. The X-Wing game, it came with flat shaded polygons, and the original version of TIE Fighter upgraded and provided Gurad shading. But this special, or the collector's edition, added texture mapping. And I believe it was the first X-Wing game to offer graphics hardware acceleration. Although I doubt it works on modern hardware. Generally, software is the way to go.
Capture operation complete. Superb work, Alpha 1. Primary mission objectives complete. We have recaptured Outpost D-34 and have driven off the rebels.
Another successful mission. And of course, if you're successful, the game will start awarding you medals and stuff.
Prepare to join the secret order of the Emperor.
Don't tase me, bro! Oh wait, it's just like a fancy tattoo.
Gunboat patrols have located a rebel cruiser taking on supplies in the Bruani sector. We can assume the cruiser has a strong force of A-Wing, X-Wing and B-Wing starfighters. Our attack will proceed in waves. You will fly in the first wave, made up of 3 flight groups of gunboats. Your primary task is to destroy the starfighter defense that the cruiser will send into battle. Once the starfighter defense has been eliminated, assist the second wave in their attack. The second wave will enter the battle in 5 minutes. They will escort transports carrying torpedoes. The supply containers need to be destroyed to prevent the cruiser from getting resupplied.
The X-Wing games introduced the Alpha-class gunboats to the Star Wars universe. If you are a nerd who plays tabletop games, then you might know that this is the most requested ship for the X-Wing miniatures game, and it's coming out in the next wave of releases, and no doubt will be essential to get a leg up in the meta game.
The cruiser has launched starfighters. Let's take them out. Group Tau, engage Group Nu, engaging A-Wings. Group Mu, engaging X-Wings.
And this is the first Imperial ship you get to fly, which has shields. And you know, when I flew this first, I completely forgot about shield management. I forgot about, reallocating power to my shields. I get seriously beat up before I had to restart the mission. But yeah, we also get to shoot at B-Wings, one of my favourite ships from the Star Wars universe, of course. I mean, stylistically, I really like the ridiculous rotating cockpit mechanism that doesn't make very much sense at all in the Star Wars universe, where you have got artificial gravity everywhere. But all the same, it's fun to be shooting them down. The gunboat is the first ship you fly in the game, which also brings ion cannons. So yeah, here's me chasing after these cargo containers to try and get a clue of what's inside them. The Emperor is very interested in shenanigans related to his admirals and the rebellion. And remember, you were ordered to destroy these things, but if you scan them first, you can get extra goals unlocked.
Incoming missile.
Oh, incoming missile, great! Yeah, you'll find out that the X-Wings and Y-Wings are all quite capable of launching concussion missiles at you as well. I actually ended up switching it down to easy level because I'm getting old and clearly can't play at the same level as I used to. When I was young, though, I remember having the spare time to beat this whole game on hard, because I just was a crazy person. So yeah, notice on the left, no shields in the rear. That's not going to work out well for me, is it? Told ya. Yeah, normally after you get hit like that, you hit S 3 times to balance the shields forwards, backwards, in both directions. But look, the Imperial Navy has great health insurance. I mean, none of those rebel back-to-tank things where you're kind of floating around in a nappy while everyone looks at you. We have green light technology.
It appears that our own forces are very eager to destroy the cargo containers sitting near the cruiser Lulsla. They must be inspected. Our forces may be trying to cover something up.
It's worth noting that although I get shot down, I get rescued, and the mission is considered complete, so I can go on to the next mission. And the objective of this one is pretty much to finish off a rebel capital ship.
Rebel transports are evacuating the Lulsla. Target destroyed.
Yeah, that went pretty well.
Target destroyed. Primary mission objectives completed. More rebel transports and shuttles are abandoning the Lulsla. The cruiser Lulsla has been destroyed. Excellent work. Now hunt down the fleeing rebel commander and disable his craft.
So yeah, remember I mentioned that this spacecraft has ion cannons? That means that you are actually able to disable their spacecraft, so you just gotta find them. And this one has the commander, or it's commander. And so yeah, there we go. Full-on ion cannon. Sounds like the ion cannon from Empire Strikes Back, probably because that's what they sampled. So the ion cannon, the bolts move a little slower than the lasers, so it's much harder to lead. You kind of have to guess where the lead position should be. Your sight will turn green, but you don't really have a reference point for whether you need to move left or right. You gotta kind of play it by the seat of your pants and guess where you're trying to aim. I think modern players might actually have a big problem with that.
Secondary objectives completed. You disable the transport carrying the Lulsla's commander. We will send a boarding party. Now, hyperspace home.
Excellent. Mission complete. The Lulsa is dead. And I get to go home using my super fancy hyperspace technology. Something those rebel fighter pilots no doubt take for granted. So yeah, the first battle is 6 different missions. They all join together and then you get this little cutscene here explaining what's been going on behind your back. The background music is MIDI, by the way, and if you go to the GOG forums, there's a description of how to improve the MIDI sounds.
I have come with an offer for the rebellion.
We have little reason to trust you, Admiral Harkov, but we are willing to hear your offer.
The fleet under my command is willing to join the Rebel Alliance for a price.
Very interesting, Admiral. We have great need for officers of your caliber. Here is what I propose.
So yeah, that's it. That's TIE Fighter. That is, for me, it is the best Star Wars game. It's a fantastic space sim. The missions are really well laid out. There's always fun stuff going on. The spacecraft are all very differentiated, and really, it's just a shame that nobody has made a better Star Wars game. I'm Scott Manley. Fly safe.